Hi, everyone. Welcome to the 21st episode of Genealogy Pep Talk, a podcast. First, can I say, we are at 21. That's pretty cool. So congratulations, everybody who's done some talking. Woohoo!
Yay! Hooray!
Hooray. Okay, anyway, thanks for that. My name is Suzanne, and I am a senior library specialist with Arapahoe Libraries here in Colorado. I have two other staff members with me who are my fellow co-hosts of this podcast. There is Cindy, a library specialist, and Katie, a career services librarian. Hi, ladies.
Hello.
This podcast is about gathering some tips and tricks for your family search journey for whenever you get stuck on searching for an ancestor, because it does happen. We also share with you some experiences of our own, along with anecdotes and stories in researching our own families. Today's episode is also a different one, but yet the same, but not. In the past, we have chatted amongst the three of us, and then we added guest stars, and those guest stars have been our fellow staff members. And today we have another guest star who is a staff member. And the reason I say it's different, because it was the same, did you see what I said? Is that we're going to be talking about a subject which is slightly different from what we usually discuss. Our podcast-e, is that a word, audience? And by that I mean the two of you.
Yes, sure. It's my brother would always say it's grammatically correct, so it must be a word.
Okay.
And Lao Tzu would say a road is made by people walking on it. Things are so because we make them so.
Okay.
So I suppose if we just start using it, then podcasty will become a word.
Our podcastee is Ellie. Ellie is a youth reference librarian at one of our branches, and she is raring to go with our next subject, which is called, well, I titled it, but it's not really a title. But it's an idea of creating an out-of-the-box family tree. Okay, I think everybody knows this old joke, so I'm going to tell it to you anyway. You can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but you cannot pick your friend's nose.
Thanks for that one.
Insert laughter. Okay, while that joke is funny to a certain age group, part of it is true. You can pick your friends, and sometimes those friends become your family. I will also include, and I'll get a little creative license here, your great Aunt Vida May, who raised you as a baby, or your late father's best friend, Virgil, but you call him Uncle Buddy. And let's say he adopted you. Or your hiking pals who have you listed in their and your emergency contact list as family. So, Ellie, my next thought is for you. How do you make a family tree using your friends? I think she has the answer, or at the very least, a formula for putting one together. What is your out-of-the-box solution, Ellie?
Wow. Well, I think that saying that I have the answer is maybe a little bit premature, but I think that it's perhaps more that I'm interested in dwelling in the question of how to create a family tree that feels like it can reflect, how you've gotten to where you are in the world. We initially started talking about this just because I was curious, Suzanne, about this podcast that you all do, and in thinking about my genealogy and my personal history, I don't think I necessarily look to my parents' and my kind of like genetic lineage per se. But obviously I've like come to become the person that I am somehow, and there are definitely influences in my life and a family that I have that I love, some of whom I'm related to and many of whom I'm not. So I guess I've been curious to try to untangle how the parts that feel less conventional and rooted in like a mom and a dad getting married under the law and God and having children, etc. How the parts of what I see as my family that are outside of that can work in like a genealogy context.
It's like maybe you've had a rough family life and you have disowned them, or they're just estranged and you don't talk with them, but you have kind of adopted, the word loosely, your friends. How do you know, who's the person who raised you from age, not necessarily through legal paperwork, but through the age of your young 20s to maybe your late 20s? Okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. Okay, don't do that. But, I'm kind of your guide in life right now. So, but how do you is that kind of a parental? Is that a mom? Is that a dad? Is that great Aunt Vida,
Yeah, I mean, I'm still in that journey of becoming an adult, I think. And I'm very grateful to have my parents, who I talk to on the phone all the time, who definitely give me parental guidance. But also when I was living in Massachusetts, I had a co-teacher who was also my landlord, who, without her, I wouldn't have been able to settle in a sort of new place and find my community, because she introduced me. I'm actually going to Massachusetts for a friend's wedding next week, and she had the same landlord as me. So my landlord was like, Ellie, you don't have any friends in this town. I'm going to have you over for dinner so you can meet Maggie. And that's an important part of my history. Mm-hmm. And she's somebody that she's a writer. She writes children's books. And she taught me how to teach kids how to read, which, in my work as a children's librarian is pretty notable and important.
I'd say that's important. Yeah.
Yeah. I've been able to read some of her manuscripts and give her feedback. And she's had short stories published in Cricket magazine. So it's a fun, collaborative, and special relationship that we have that it doesn't feel like she's a stand-in for a parental figure. It feels like she's a professional mentor and neighbor in my heart, even though we live across the country from each other now. But I don't know, I think everybody, or lots of people, have people like that in their lives that they wouldn't throw into the family bucket, but who might overlap in a lot of ways of what family could be.
Yeah, family bucket, yeah. But then you come here, and we work in a library, and there's all kinds of walks of life, age, and just ethnicities, and all kinds of beliefs and whatever. So it's kind of fun on some days, and to see all those differences. But what's funny is the age thing. Okay, you graduated high school 3 years ago, and I graduated, 30 years ago. But yet at the same time, we are so on this level, whoever we are. And it's just kind of funny. And it's if the right person has the same maturity.
Well, and it's funny because one of the reasons why I wanted to work in a larger organization than when I was working before ALD is I wanted to have coworkers that were my own age. And then it turns out that the people that are great to talk to, age is not necessarily a matter. It doesn't necessarily matter because everybody has something to say, and it's pretty lovely. So.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty good.
I like that our community here just spans so many experiences, and people come to library work from so many places.
Well, and I wanted to point out at our Eloise May Library, a majority of those patrons are from other countries. We have several Russian, Ukrainian speaking staff, and I've helped patrons from all over. I've helped patrons, from Somalia, Ethiopia, especially African countries where it's probably not so great to be there right now.
Right.
So I love doing that. Mongolia is another one I can think of, which is a little bit different.
Yeah.
But I just love helping those patrons, and I would never have had the opportunity to come across people like that without working here. So, yeah, it's a really great experience
For sure.
to meet and talk to these really interesting people.
And
I think people need to think more about like what the idea of family is. I think we just get stuck on that. This is my nuclear family. It's my brothers, my sisters, my parents, whatever. So it really is fascinating to see like how many families we actually all have.
Right.
I have my library family. I have my,
Yeah.
So it's just a really cool concept. And I think this is such an interesting discussion. And, I'm really glad that you all brought this together because just really fascinating to think about.
I think the thing that was interesting to me that felt like, oh, this is historical research. I read this memoir. It's called Lesbian Love Story, a memoir in archives. I picked it up because it has a great title. It's by Amelia Posada, and I read it last year or maybe this past winter. And this author goes through maybe 5 or 6 different historical figures who either were out as lesbians or out as queer and living their lives and being a part of like queer activist movements, or people that were athletes or writers who weren't necessarily out and aren't necessarily like historically known for being queer, but likely were. And it was a really interesting approach to a memoir because she wasn't telling her story. She was telling all of these stories of these different women, and then also kind of adding in kind of maybe what she thinks the gaps of the historical narrative might be. Anyway, so that book just was a really interesting approach for me to say, what if you just could go back through history and find the stories that speak to you as a way to understand where you sit in history in the moment. And those people don't necessarily have to have been your mom's great aunts, cousins.
Yeah. Personally, to me, genealogy means like my history. It doesn't mean just like my genetic lineage. It means, because we've talked about, like your hometown, right? That's a big part of your history, and the people that you grew up with, and all those kind of things. So to me, that's more what genealogy means to me, is like my history, the people who have influenced my life, the people I hold dear, who I value, so, my lineage is what it is. But like my genealogy, my personal family history can be so much broader and so much wider than that.
Yeah. What was really cool about reading, because you were talking about hometowns, what was cool about reading this memoir is the first person that the author kind of like does a chapter on is this writer who wrote under the pen name Mary Castle, and she published her memoir called The Stonewall in 1930. Some people say that memoir might have led to why the Stonewall Inn is called the Stonewall Inn. So there's like even more queer history there. And it turns out that her real name was Ruth Fuller Field, and she grew up in Deerfield, Massachusetts, which is where I'm from.
Wow.
Connection again.
So, yeah, so it was, and it's really interesting because my hometown is really well historically documented. Like, it actually never occurred to me until a year and a half ago when I was reading this book that, like, any queer people had ever historically existed in the town that I grew up in. Which, when I look at it, I'm like, that's bonkers. Like, of course. It was just really exciting to truly stumble across this story and say, oh, wow, like, this person who has this important piece of queer history in their writing walked by the same river as me. And that feels like incredibly meaningful.
Yeah. They tripped over that same stone that I just tripped over.
That bird pooped on them too.
Isn't that one of the things we love about genealogy is when you get those surprises of, your great aunt who was a German spy or a Russian spy or something like that. You have those stories and you're like, oh, wait, they did what? So
yeah, it is. It's true. It's 6 degrees of, and then insert anybody's name.
It's just,
which is kind of cool.
It's so amazing how we have this great big world and then there's just so many connections and you're just like, how, out of all these millions of people and all these, bajillions of towns and cities and whatever, how can we, how does this happen? It's kind of mind-boggling and fascinating.
Yeah, I was reading this memoir of Annie Sullivan, Helen Keller's teacher. Annie Sullivan did get married. There was a lot of labor unrest going around the country. They mentioned that he had to leave to go help a labor uprising in Little Falls, New York. That's where my grandparents grew up, and it was in 1912, and that's when my grandparents came here and went to Little Falls, New York, of all places, and I had no idea, so I went and looked it up, and there, sure enough, there was a big textile factory uprising in 1912, and that's where my grandparents were actually at those textile factories up there. So, it's just, what a weird, random thing to read in a biography.
Let's talk more about your family history. Just some of plug some names from your family.
Sure.
And then let's talk more about Deerfield, Massachusetts.
Totally. I can start one familial thing that's interesting. I think that also makes me feel like I have the permission to shape my personal family narrative how I want is my grandfather, Jerry, my paternal grandfather, my dad's dad. I'll just tell you a little bit about him. He was born in October of 1929, right before the market crashed, and grew up thinking that it was his fault.
That's awful.
That's heavy.
Yeah, so I think he kind of internalized that a little bit, which is really, really sad to think about, honestly. When he was a little baby, his dad walked out on him and his mom, and he grew up, with his mom and then also in and out of foster care. Anyway, before my grandfather, Jerry, married my grandma Barbara, he changed his name. The last name that I have is the name that he chose for our family. And because of that, it means a lot to me. And it feels really special and on purpose, because I think some people feel a big connection to their family name because of its lineage, because it, they can follow it back in time a really long ways. And some people maybe want to shirk that, paternalism where, it kind of feels like you're the property of some guy. I don't know. But I think for me, my last name, it feels really meaningful. And, my brother just got married this summer and his wife decided to take our family name. And that feels like it's so celebratory to me to get to welcome her into our family in that way and welcome her into this story that is really only a few generations old. But that is, people, my grandparents who I really look up to and who, have created in part have contributed to how I am and how I go through the world and how my dad is as well. And, me and my dad and both of his parents all have careers working with children. And that's really special and super cool. So I don't have so much of my lineage on my dad's side. Both of his parents are kind of European mix. And then my mom is half Irish and half Polish. And I think growing up, because my mom had, cultural tradition from her mom, who's Polish. I feel like that's the cultural tie that I have the most. And also because my family calls me the Polish throwback because I look like I'm Polish.
Gotcha.
And I'm sure there's more. There's so many more stories that I have yet to uncover.
Yeah.
But
well, we can help. And by helping, I'll tell you, as our listeners, just a reminder, RapahoLibraries.org, and go to the research tab. And then you're going to look for genealogy and local history. That tab, you're going to click on it. And then you're going to go to the one that says genealogy resources. Click on that and you'll find the podcast, by the way. But if you go scroll down a little bit more, you'll find Ancestry.com. It's the library edition. And you certainly can use Ancestry for free, but you have to come into the library to use it on the computers. So just a little plug for Arapahoe Libraries. Let's talk candles.
Oh, sure. Well, the other thing, we were talking about my hometown in Deerfield, Massachusetts. And I said, well, should I talk about the fact that it's the Yankee Candle flagship store? That's just kind of a fun,
Right. That's a little
fun
trivia.
little trivia thing.
Yeah.
So the town that I grew up in it was way back in the day, the western frontier of Massachusetts Bay Colony. It was incorporated as a town in 1673 in the Pecumtuck Valley. And it's a great spot. Basically, the Connecticut River is this big river that runs south towards Connecticut. It's the border between Vermont and New Hampshire. And then it goes kind of through Massachusetts. And then there's this little river, the Deerfield River.
How long have your folks lived there? A couple generations, or?
No. So both my parents grew up in upstate New York.
Not Little Falls?
Not Little Falls. No, that would have been really exciting. I should have just lied, right? No, but kind of outside of Albany area. But it is kind of funny. As I said, my mom's a history teacher, and at one point she was gonna give a talk to incoming students at her high school, and kind of in the center of the school that she works at is a road called Albany Road, and there's a sign, an old historic sign that says to Albany, and it's pointing, west. So my mom kind of did some research into it, and it's just a little street in our town, and it dead ends after half a mile or something.
Yeah.
Well, remember, connections and going back and seeing people again, you might end up back there again in 20 years. Here's an interesting little fact for the folks out there. The movie Holdovers, starring Paul Giamatti, who was fabulous in it, by the way, and some guy, young guy. Ellie, I think, will know more about that information. But anyway, it was filmed on a school that Ellie knows about.
Yeah, so I think the writer of the Holdovers as well was a Deerfield Academy. That's the school campus I grew up on. Alum. So he was writing about a fictional boarding school, but he had this experience of going to Deerfield Academy. And then the film was shot at 3 different schools, 2 high schools, and then a small college in Massachusetts. But there are some beautiful shots of some of the older Deerfield Academy buildings, and then all the classroom scenes are shot in we call it the main school building, which is where I had all my history and social studies classes in high school. So that's kind of fun. And it's just fun to get to. I saw it in the theater here in Colorado with my brother, and he and I were laughing the whole time because we were like, that's Memorial Street. Whoa. And there were a couple of shots that the transitions, if you didn't know what all the buildings looked like, it would look like, oh, that makes sense that must be right next to that. But we were like, wait a minute, like those two buildings aren't near each other. Like they couldn't be walking and have that go. So that was kind of funny. And it's just cool to get to kind of share with people the landscape that I grew up in, because it's like these beautiful ivy-covered buildings and kind of New England architecture, that kind of thing.
Yeah. What's the population there?
Oh.
So there's more candles than people?
Yeah, I would say definitively more candles than people. And then definitely more corn stalks than people. And we're maybe like 1-to-1 on dairy cows and people.
Oh, wow.
I can relate to the corn thing because I'm from Iowa. So
totally.
Yeah, there's definitely way more corn stalks than people in Iowa.
Yeah.
Do you know why you should never tell a secret in a cornfield?
I do not.
Because the corn has ears.
Oh.
Good one. Oh, that sounds like a joke for me. Yeah, thank you for that.
That kind of rounds out I mean, that's a really corny joke.
That's totally corny. Totally.
That's one I've heard a few times.
Yeah, I didn't make that one up. I won't take credit.
Next episode, we should do the genealogy of jokes.
Ooh.
Wouldn't that be interesting? I don't know, snooze fest or hilarious? I don't know. Something to think about for the future.
Interesting.
Speaking of the future, I think that's it. Do you have any more?
Okay, history is done.
History is done, over, checked out. I think for fun, though, we should all do this at home, is create a friend's family tree, just for fun.
Oh, yeah.
Just, just kind of do a little doodle and see how many people you can put on one branch, that are related
before
or whatever.
it breaks.
Before it breaks, right? How many new leaves?
Load bearing. Yeah.
Right. There's a new leaf right there. Dink. I just met that person. Well, thanks everyone for listening. I think we're all done here. We're going to pack up this show. We do have a disclaimer, as we always do, because, that's what we do here. The disclaimer is this. The three of us are not certified genealogists. We are just three people who are just sitting around and having a chat about genealogy. We hope that some or all of this information helps you along the way to finding your family. Once again, thanks for listening to another episode of Genealogy Pep Talk, a podcast. Okay, what do we say? Goodbye, people.
Goodbye, people.
Thanks for listening. We'll see ya.